Well, after many sluggish weeks, it would seem that Big Brother 21 is officially starting to begin.
Don't change the channel, don't touch that dial. We got it all on UHF. Take off your sneakers.
Hey guys, it's Kemi, my review for this week of Big Brother 21, episodes 15 through 17, and I have to say, look, I have been very down on the season. In fact, last week I was ready to call it quits. I was like, there really is no saving the season. However, was this an amazing week? No, this was a fairly, average week of Big Brother, but the way things do conclude here, I kind of do feel like things are starting to get a little bit better. I know I'm going to contradict myself here, but I do actually think things are starting to look up. The things that I want to happen are starting to happen. Now, it's still not great, but for this season's standards, it's really starting to pick up because it's mainly deviating from what we've been seeing, and I'm glad. I hope that we're heading into the direction I think we are, but either way, we're just going to get into this week. Which, honestly, there's not really a ton to talk about for Sunday night's episode. It's a fairly straightforward episode. Mainly, a lot of it just revolves at first around the HOH, which I actually did like the way this endurance was done. It wasn't a wall. They had to, actually hang on to, this platform and thing. It actually seemed pretty hard and kind of grueling, and that's something that I have not been able to say about a lot of competitions lately because they've all seemed fairly easy. This one actually seemed legitimately hard, and I actually do think it was kind of a nice sort of change of pace in terms of the endurance, which it usually, is a wall or just them having to hang on to something. Here, it actually did seem pretty easy to fall off, and I was impressed by that. But the main thing to talk about here during this is Jackson. Jackson is someone who I've said before, he has a terrible social game. He doesn't seem to do anything to better his game, and this week it very much shows that's starting to catch up to him because during this HOH, we see Jackson and he is just constantly talking to Holly. Holly and Sis, they're like the last two people up there, which I was very surprised that it got down to those two. You would not think that those two would be the last one standing, but yeah, those two are the last one standing, and Jackson is just constantly talking to Holly, encouraging her, and it's really starting to get annoying for people because he is, you see Sis and she's trying to make a deal with Holly to see who's going to drop down first, but Jackson just keeps running his mouth, and it's not just her that notices it. Christie and Tommy notices as well. They are starting to get annoyed by Jackson, and I am loving this. I love the fact that these people are starting to get annoyed with what he's doing because I said it before, this is eventually going to bite him in the ass, and it already is, and it just shows that Jackson is someone who he's felt too powerful for far too long, and you can see how that's starting to really, you can see how that really is starting to be a real detriment to his game, the fact that he is someone that is has been constantly calling the shots and things like that, and has been in power for the most part every single week, minus a couple of them. And it does eventually get down to Holly and Sis. As I said, Holly does end up winning this HOH, which I was a little bit surprised by. I would not think Holly is someone that would win, but essentially because it's Holly's HOH, it's also Jackson's HOH. And again, that's something that Christie and Tommy are very much starting to pick up on, as I said. And Holly makes her target very clear with that she is going to make sure that her target is, in fact, Nick and Sam. It's a very, very straightforward week in that way. So she puts the two of them up, and again, for her sake, her game's sake, these are definitely the right two people to target because obviously you want to keep Nicole, you want to keep Cliff, you want to keep them in your back pocket. You want to keep Kat, who we'll get to Kat in a little bit. There's actually a lot going on with those two this week that I definitely do want to talk about. Yeah, so basically, the way things do play out, Holly does put up Nick and Sam. Not really a ton else to talk about on Sunday. And in fact, there is so little going on in Sunday's episode besides that HOH comp that we actually have time to get a Who Wants to See My HOH Room segment, which I cannot remember the last time we saw that. Probably last season. I don't think we've seen it yet this season. So that just shows that, like, there really is not a ton going on Sunday night. We have this whole, like, segment devoted to, like, how Kat thinks all these weird, like, conspiracy theories and things like that. Just not really a lot to talk here. But again, the main thing is that people are starting to get agitated by Jackson, and you can very much see that here, and that really does lead into Wednesday's episode. And now we get into Wednesday, which there's a little bit more to talk about. Now, this wasn't really a particularly good episode at all. In fact, I really didn't like this episode all that much. But again, a lot of the stuff we do see in this episode leads into why I think the second half of the season is going to be something legitimately good and something that actually gives us something to talk about rather than just, you know, a bunch of terrible shits and awful gameplay, which we've been seeing throughout the season. So again, as I said, Holly has made her target clear in Nick and Sam. It doesn't really seem like anything is really going to change there. They're pretty you know, they pretty much think that Nick is going to go home. That is until Nick actually ends up winning the veto here, which they were all very shocked by. They did not expect for this to be the case at all. And because Nick has now won the veto, very early on, Kat just randomly volunteers herself, says, hey, put me up, I'll be a pawn, you know, no one will think that we're actually working here, because we know that Holly and Kat are now working together, which, they also kind of confirm that, like, these two know each other. It seems like that rumor is actually true. They actually do have some sort of history before Big Brother, which, again, I don't know who's Kat. I don't know what Robin Cass is doing lately, but this is just lazy. Like, why do you keep casting people that know each other? I mean, again, it's kind of a good thing for what we get, what we've gotten before, but that's for next week's discussion for sure. But anyway, Kat just randomly volunteers herself, and look, I like Kat a lot. I think she's a very entertaining house guest, but what the fuck are you doing here? Like, you don't just volunteer yourself to go up on the block. I said the same thing about Jackson last week. Like, by doing this, you can still be targeted. There could be a flip. There could be a potential situation in which you are the one that ends up leaving. So she should have known better to not do something this idiotic. There are many other people that Holly could have gone with. She could have gone with Nicole. She could have gone with Cliff, you know, which, by the way, I do have to say, in terms of Cliff, I do actually think, you know, as much as I did admonish him, and I was really annoyed by what he did with, you know, his decision to put up Bella last week, it actually does seem to be going in his favor, because at no point in this week is anybody talking about going after Cliff. Christie is very much on good terms with him. Nobody really seems to be, you know, in his radar, so I guess in some ways this actually was the best move for Cliff's game, because at no point this week, like I said, is his name brought up as a potential target. Nicole's name is brought up, but Holly even makes it clear, like, if she's going to put Nicole up, that is going to be her target, because she is not on their side, whereas Sam and Nick were former affiliates of, you know, Undeniable, and obviously she's putting them up because of the fact that she can't trust him, whereas they never had anything with Nicole. So she kind of just feels like she should put her up, which in hindsight, yeah, that's probably what she should have done, because by putting up Kat, I mean, again, it ensures that there's a possibility, you know, it really muddies the waters in the sense where Kat could end up going home, and then your HOH is a total waste. So I don't think Holly really considered that at all. I don't really think that was a very good idea. So yeah, that stuff I really didn't like at all. I thought that was just really dumb on Holly's part. She should have known better. Like, you know, Kat's a close ally of mine. I really shouldn't do that. And I get it. Like, she doesn't want to make it seem like those two are working together. But, like, there's so many other options in the house that you could have gone with. I don't know why she chose Kat. I don't know why she went along with this. It just seems like a really dumb decision on her part. The stuff that I do want to talk about, though, is what is going on with Christie and Tommy. As I said, they do not like the way that Jackson is treating Holly. Sis Sis gets word of this, and she goes right to Holly, who basically thinks that Sis is lying. She thinks that Sis is trying to turn Christie and Tommy against her, so she thinks, maybe I should just put up Sis. Let's see, what happens. And here's the thing. If she were to put up Sis, then Sam is 100% going home, because nobody is going to vote Sis out, because again, she's not really playing the game. She's not really doing all that much. However, this is the first thing I see from Sis where it legitimately seems like maybe she is trying to play the game. It's not helping her game. If anything, it's kind of ruining her game a bit, but at least she is doing something game-related. She's not just sitting and, tanning. She's not just sitting and just talking about trivial shit. She actually is seeming like she's playing the game. Again, still a terrible player, no doubt about it, but this is the first thing I see from her legitimately trying to play the game. But again, Holly just thinks that Sis is lying to her. And again, it really does kind of show how good Christie and Tommy have been with Jackson and Holly up to this point. The fact that they don't think that they're actually deceiving them, and the fact that they don't think that those two would be going against them, it does show how tight those four have been, and how them wanting to be, the six, that is legitimately true. There's even though there's a lot of contention clearly going on within there, and, unbeknownst to Jackson, Holly, Christie, and Tommy do want to take a shot at them. They are getting annoyed at them, and you can very much see that here. So, you would think that Holly would possibly put up Sis, but she doesn't. She goes with Kat. Again, not really a lot to talk about there. And yeah, and the whole time, Sam, you can see he's very confused as to why he was targeted, and it's like, dude, why do you think you were targeted? He thinks he's just guilty by association, but no, it's not that you're guilty by association, it's that you won 2 vetoes. You are the only person this year to win 2 vetoes in a row, 2 comps in a row, may I add. So that immediately is going to make you a target. That's going to be someone that they're going to worry about, because they're going to be worried that you are going to continue winning vetoes, and they know that you're not really on your side. His loyalty and his true allegiance in this game is to Nick. It's not with them. As much as he'll try to get himself back in, it's not really with them at this point. So the fact that Sam is really confused as to why he's targeted, again, it shows that he's not even really that strong of a player, because it's pretty obvious that he's being targeted because of his comp wins. He's not being targeted because he was associated with Nick. It's because he was able to win comps, and other people haven't been able to. So I don't really get why he feels, why he's so confused by that. It seems pretty obvious to me. But again, not really a lot to talk about there either. But also Christie and Tommy, the only other thing to really talk about with them is that because they don't end up doing well in the HOH, they have to do what's called a poison ivy thing, where they have to walk around the house looking like they're covered in poison ivy, and it's fun to watch. I don't particularly like Christie all that much. Tommy's very 50-50 for me. I think he could end up doing really well in the second half of this game, but this first half he just has not really been doing too much, other than the fact that he's not anyone's target at the moment. But why would he be, really? There's really no reason to go after him, so I guess he's doing a good job. And they go from being covered in poison ivy to, on Wednesday, being covered head to toe in calamine lotion. And that, again, a lot of fun to watch. They do some really fun stuff with that for sure. Not a ton to talk about there, but, they seem to handle it pretty well. And it's always fun when house guests get to, do something where they're dressing up in a costume, or they do something that makes them look a little less presentable. And this is a very good example of that for sure. This was definitely very fun to watch. And not only that, but apparently they can't shower, they can't go outside because they have to be quarantined as if they do have poison ivy and things like that. And again, this is always a lot of fun to watch. Just seeing, players be put in these really awful, these really just, less than stellar situations. Always a lot of fun, and definitely the case here. It wasn't anything that big. I've definitely seen worse in terms of, costumes and, certain situations they're put in, but this was still a lot of fun to watch, and definitely really entertaining for sure. This does also give us our first legitimately hilarious moment of the season, where because these two are covered in calamine lotion, Nicole thinks they look like flamingos, and she goes on this whole rant about just how terrified she is of flamingos, and it was pretty hilarious to watch. Nicole is just such an entertaining house guest. I'm really loving every second of her, and I hope we do continue to get more of her in the coming weeks, because she's definitely turning out to be a real highlight for sure. Not just, you know, someone who's really endearing and sweet, but someone who also is just a lot of fun to watch, and it's moments like this that really highlight that. Now, Thursday, oh, that's when things get really juicy, and that's when we get into the real meat and potatoes of this week. I mean, there's a lot to talk about. I mean, especially the fact that we start off the episode, and you can see Julie is just so befuddled. Like, she has no idea what's about to go on, what's gonna transpire throughout the night, who's actually going to be evicted, and we are also at a loss for words because we don't really know what's going on either. Now, all of the details of that are going to be revealed on Sunday. I already know a lot of what happened, but I'm going to save that for next week's review, just because in terms of the, you know, airings of the show, that has still not been covered yet. So we're going to get into that, but the main thing to talk about is really what happened, you know, since Holly now has this notion that maybe Christie and Tommy aren't to be trusted. Kat actually lets her in that, no, this is the case. Analyse is not, you know, sis is not trying to lie to you. This is very much true. And I really did like seeing that here, where Kat tells her that Christie and Tommy apparently went to her, Jessica, and said, like, she doesn't want to work with the six shooters towards the end of the game. She wants to work with the outsiders. And this very much annoys Holly. She realizes that, yeah, Christie has a pattern where she's constantly just talking. Everyone is trying to, you know, she's always just constantly running her mouth and never really letting anyone else get a word in edgewise. And she realizes that, yeah, maybe we aren't safe with them. Maybe this is starting to, you know, become a problem, and cracks are very much starting to form there. And you see Holly realize that maybe she should have just put up Nicole, because then she'd be getting out someone that could potentially damage the six, because Nicole is someone that Christie, again, has mentioned that she wants to work with. And I do feel like it would have been in Holly's best interest to work with Nicole, to put up Nicole, even though Nicole, yes, she would have left. That would have been one less person that could have ruined, you know, the six. And obviously, I don't want the six. I want the six to be ruined. I don't want the six to sustain. But in terms of Holly's game, that would have absolutely been the right move for her. But obviously, she can't take back what she did. So they're starting to get very worried about that going on. And again, I like seeing this. I like seeing that these cracks are starting to form. We have been definitely hinting at it for a while. I think ever since, you know, back when Grateful was a thing, we've all been wondering, like, what is really going to drive them apart? And we're starting to see that it's really just kind of been building up, and we're very much at that point where they're about to split up entirely, and I really did like seeing that here, because as I said, I don't like that these guys have been in power for so long. I like the fact that things are starting to fall apart here, and it's definitely really great to see. It hints at some sort of, you know, changing for the season and some sort of hope that a week ago I would not have thought we had. But the other big part is with Sam, who I have to say, despite the fact that what ends up happening, I do think he did a good job of trying to keep himself safe, trying to give a reason as to, okay, this is why you need me to stay, because last week, apparently, he had some information from Christie that she wasn't going to just vote the way that Jack or Jackson wanted her to vote. She was going to do what was in Cliff's best interest. And this, of course, was before he had decided to put a Bella, but at that point, she was okay with one of them leaving. And this, again, is a huge red flag for Jackson, knowing this. And I think Sam, he did enough here to where he could have stirred the pot a bit, to where he could have kept them in his good graces. And unfortunately, though, it's not enough. Sam does very much end up leaving here. And again, I'm not too upset about it, because Sam was very much a wild card in that way, where he could have potentially kept the six together, and we knew obviously we don't want that to happen, but I like that he did plant this information to And I mean, at least I don't have to hear, send it, every few seconds. So, I mean, that is definitely a plus for sure. And like I said, I think Sam's pitch was legitimately good. It just happened a little too late. And again, considering what ended up transpiring on Thursday, I don't really think that made much of a difference, unfortunately, in the grand scheme of things. It definitely made Jackson aware that Christie was his target, but it didn't really increase Sam's lifespan in the game all that much, which is a little disappointing. And again, this really does reassure Jackson of something that he already knew, that Christie is coming after him, and she very much is his #1 target now. And I love it. I love seeing these two gunning for each other, and I like the way Sam was able to do this, but I feel like he did it a little too late. He should have done this throughout the week, you know, when he thought, okay, possibly my life in this game could be on the line. Yes, you have Nick, but you need more than just Nick. There's more than, there's other votes there, and at that point, he didn't know if he was going home or not, so he should have done what he can to keep himself in there, and I think that's ultimately what sealed his fate, because Sam does end up leaving, regardless of us not knowing if a flip is going to happen. I kind of wish it did, because it would have been hilarious if Kat actually did leave, because again, this was made for her to keep a target off of her and Holly's back, so if she actually left, that would have been really funny, but no, Sam does end up leaving, and yeah, I'm not necessarily upset about it, but I'm a little disappointed, because I do kind of wish that Sam could have been kept around to possibly do some damage, to possibly make sure that this Christie and Jackson feud just continues to develop, because I like where this is going, but that's really how we end things. And then the way this episode ends, though, I thought was really lame. You think we're gonna get some, like, crab shoot competition or something like that, or it's going to be a question thing, but no, Julie ends the episode, and she lets all of them study. Yes, we end an episode. This is a live show, mind you. We get to see them study. I wish I was making this up, I really do, but it ends with us getting to see them study. You can see that a lot of them are not in the best of moods, and that's really the way we end things here. And you know what? I am actually really liking the way things are playing out. You know, we have a lot of information here as to why the six could potentially turn against each other, something that is going to fracture them and turn them apart, and that's something that I really want to see. I don't want to see these guys in power constantly, and seeing them gunning for each other, now that's suddenly a lot more interesting. Now that suddenly gets me a lot more excited, and if that's where we are heading, with the six being torn apart, which here's what I would love to see happen. This is like my ideal scenario. Jack or Jackson leaves next week. That happens. That's definitely what needs to happen. Now, I would say Jack should be the one that should leave, because if Jack leaves, well, he has Christie, he has Sis, he has Tommy. Those are three allies right there that are suddenly a lot more vulnerable and are looking for other people to work with. And then that also makes Jackson and Holly as well people who are a lot more vulnerable in that sense. And Jackson already is vulnerable because now he has Christie and Tommy coming after him, which means he probably also has Sis and Jack eventually coming after him. It'll be no time. It'll be just a matter of time until they're coming after him. So I like the way that that's going. And then they can possibly reel in someone like a Cliff or a Nicole and Kat, and suddenly their lifespan in the game increases a ton. And I'm excited to see the way things really do play out here. I think there's a lot of potential scenarios that could make this season a lot better, especially knowing what I know about Thursday night, which again, I'm not going to disclose until next week, because again, I cover what happens in the show, not what happens in the feeds. I mean, sometimes I'll bring up something in the feeds if they didn't air it or something like that. But in terms of this, I feel like it just makes sense to hold off until next week to really talk about what ends up happening here. And then as far as like Christie's power goes, I mean, we only have one more week of that really being an issue. And at this point, again, I'm not really sure if she is actually going to use it. I don't really see a scenario in which she's going to need to use it, because now she wants to go after Jackson, and she's very tight, clearly, with Cliff, Nicole, and all of them. She wants to reel them in. So I really don't see a reason as to why she needs to use this. The only reason that she need to use it. If, say, like Jack or Sis or someone like that is targeted, then I guess maybe she would need to use it. But again, that's all dependent on who ends up winning the veto. So again, I don't really think that's a problem. And we get jury next week as well, which is, I'm pretty sure after that she can't use it anymore. So hopefully that is the case here. Now, Julie did also mention something about this twist called America's Field Trip, and essentially what this is going to do is we get to pick 3 people to participate in this competition, and the person that loses has to sit on the block as a 3rd nominee, which I don't really understand why we're doing 3 nominees now when there's not even going to be that many house guests in a little bit. We're getting down to the wire, so I don't, like, there's gonna be only like 9 or 8 people in the house very soon, so I don't really know like why we're doing this, but you know, sure, yeah, let's impact the game. The one advantage this does have is that you pick the people that you dislike, they will most likely go up as a 3rd nominee. But again, it's a dumb twist. It's here to heighten the season, and especially considering that things are starting to happen, it's really not needed here. Either way, this week, again, not the greatest week, but the way things are heading, I am legitimately looking forward to. This is the first week where I feel like, okay, things are getting a little bit better. Things might actually improve a bit, and I hope that is the case. I really hope that I am not just, you know, wishing for it to get better and, you know, thinking that because I want it to get better, that it is getting better. I hope it is legitimately getting better. It's not just one of those, like, wish fulfillment sort of things. But either way, guys, that's it for this review. Hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know what you guys saw this week overall. Left your thoughts, and we'll see you guys in my next video, and we'll see you guys for that. Okay, bye.